Butter is one of the most ordinary foods on earth. You spread it on toast, you bake with it, you barely think about it. But for thousands of years, butter wasn't a symbol of comfort. It was considered the food of barbarians. Ancient civilizations looked down on people who ate it. Some used it as medicine instead of food. Others rubbed it on their skin or even their hair. So how did a humble lump of churned milk go from being a sign of uncivilized people to becoming one of the world's most beloved ingredients? That's the story hidden inside butter. Butter seems timeless. It feels as though humans have always known exactly what it was and how to use it. But history tells a different story. Its origins are surprisingly mysterious. Archaeologists uncover traces of ancient dairy production. Linguists trace words for butter across Indo-European languages. Historical records describe it with admiration in one place and disgust in another. How can the same food be considered sacred, medicinal, disgusting, luxurious, and completely ordinary, depending on where and when you lived? To answer that question, we have to travel back thousands of years to a time before butter even had a name.
Most historians believe butter wasn't invented inside a palace or laboratory. It was probably discovered by accident. Around 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, early pastoral communities carried milk inside bags made from animal stomachs or skins. Imagine spending an entire day riding across rough grasslands. The bag swings, the milk sloshes, the warm daytime heat mixes with the cool night air. Hours later, something strange has happened. Tiny yellow clumps begin separating from the liquid. Those clumps are butter. Archaeological evidence shows that humans had already begun processing dairy products thousands of years before written history. They didn't understand fat molecules or emulsions. They simply noticed that shaking milk could create something richer, thicker, and easier to preserve. Ironically, one of humanity's oldest foods may have been discovered completely by accident. If you lived in ancient Greece or Rome, butter had a reputation problem. Mediterranean civilizations adored olive oil. It represented wealth, agriculture, civilization, and refined living. Butter, on the other hand, came from colder northern lands where olive trees couldn't grow. Greek and Roman writers often associated butter with Celts, Germans, Scythians, and other northern peoples they viewed as uncivilized. Some records describe butter less as food and more as medicine. People applied it to wounds, mixed it into ointments, even used it as a cosmetic. To wealthy Romans, eating butter every day seemed almost primitive. Here's the irony. The people mocked for eating butter lived in climates where butter made perfect sense. Olive trees couldn't survive there. Butter wasn't backward, it was simply practical. And sometimes practicality beats prestige. Question: if you had grown up in ancient Rome, would you have chosen olive oil or simply eaten whatever kept your family alive?
As Europe entered the Middle Ages, butter slowly changed its reputation. Northern Europe relied heavily on cows. Milk became abundant. Butter became essential. But making it was hard work. Fresh cream had to be collected over several days. Then someone stood for hours operating a wooden churn. Back and forth, again, 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 until fat finally separated. The smell of fresh cream filled the room. Hands became sore. The process demanded patience. Butter was valuable precisely because it required so much labor. Monasteries became famous for producing high-quality butter. Farm families measured wealth partly by dairy production. In colder regions, butter became as important as olive oil was in the Mediterranean. Then something unexpected happened. The Catholic Church restricted animal fats during certain fasting periods. Butter consumption suddenly became a religious issue. Yet over time, special permissions appeared in some regions. Even churches accepted payments to allow butter consumption. One famous example is the so-called butter tower in France, funded by donations connected to butter dispensations. A food once dismissed as barbaric had become important enough to influence religion and architecture. For most of history, butter spoiled quickly. That limited who could enjoy it. Then the 19th century changed everything. Cream separators, mechanical churns, pasteurization, railroads, refrigeration. Together, these inventions transformed butter from a local farm product into a global commodity. Factories could produce butter faster than entire villages. Families in growing cities no longer needed their own cows. They simply bought butter at the market. Ironically, industrialization made butter feel less special, precisely because it became available to almost everyone. Question: how many foods in your refrigerator today once required hours or even days of exhausting manual labor?
Just when butter reached millions of homes, it met its greatest competitor, margarine. Invented in the 19th century as a cheaper alternative, margarine quickly became the center of fierce political and economic battles. Butter producers fought back. Some governments taxed margarine. Others required it to remain white so consumers wouldn't confuse it with butter. Advertising turned the debate into something almost ideological. Then came modern nutrition. For decades, butter was blamed for heart disease because of its saturated fat. Later, scientists began questioning parts of that simple narrative. Today, most nutrition experts agree the story is more nuanced than butter is good or butter is bad. The real history isn't just about nutrition. It's about economics, agriculture, politics, and changing scientific understanding. Today, butter feels ordinary. A simple yellow block sitting quietly in your refrigerator. But every time you spread it onto bread, you're repeating a process first discovered by ancient herders thousands of years ago. You're holding the product of accidental discovery, centuries of prejudice, religious debates, industrial innovation, and one of humanity's oldest relationships with domesticated animals. Few foods carry so much hidden history in such a small package.
History doesn't always hide inside kings, wars, or empires. Sometimes it hides inside breakfast. Butter reminds us that civilization isn't built only by famous rulers. It's built by ordinary people, solving ordinary problems, finding ways to preserve milk, survive harsh winters, and feed their families. The next time you spread butter across warm toast, remember, for thousands of years, that simple act would have revealed where you lived, what people thought of you, and even whether others considered you civilized. If you enjoy uncovering the forgotten history behind everyday life, subscribe and join us for the next story, because the most ordinary things often have the most extraordinary past.